Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategy, bringing you another exceptional guest. His name is Mr. Paul Deur, and he owns a company. He's co-founder of ReadyWorks. ReadyWorks is a company that helps companies with their IT services, puts it all in a streamlined fashion, makes things work the way they're supposed to. Now, in a digital world like we are now, companies must embrace the cloud. They must embrace all the digital aspect of marketing and sales and everything that's going on. And a lot of companies really don't do a great job at this because they're trying to convert from an old system to a new system. And traditionally, everything in IT gets dumped on them. So what do you do about that? You've already got a thin staff with IT. You've got them overworked, and unfortunately, if you don't do this in the right way, you lose your IT staff. And now when you lose your IT staff, you lose your productivity and you lose a lot of things. We're going to talk about redundancy. We're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about why it affects your sales and what you can do about it and what you should do about it as it relates to the business. We're also going to talk about how do you sell to people in his position and why it's so important to actually build that relationship and the capacity using the benefits of IT and how to streamline and make your IT departments work harmoniously within all the other divisions and all the other departments within your company so that everything's running more efficiently and, of course, increasing your profitability and your revenues if it's done right. So without further ado, let's go talk to Paul. Paul, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I really appreciate you being here.
How you doing, Doug? Nice to see you.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And you own a company called ReadyWorks. And what I made a habit out of is I used to say, hey, this is what the company does. But I over time, I learned, you know what? It's better to actually ask the owner of the company. So Paul, what's ReadyWorks do?
Fair enough. Doug, so ReadyWorks is a software company. It's a SaaS platform. And what we do is we help companies do digital transformations. And that's kind of a buzzword. It means a lot of different things to different people. But essentially, big companies are constantly going through technology changes. They're adopting new things. They're deploying new stuff. People in the wake of COVID have gotten an entire new working model. So we, from an IT and an infrastructure perspective, we help companies go through that transformation process faster, quicker, and with less risk and cost.
So, it's as you and I originally talked, I mean, I was in the telecommunications business, so IT was near and dear to my heart. And I always kind of felt bad for the IT department because I was the guy kind of going in there selling services, and then everything gets done to the IT department. And all the internal stuff from mobile phones to, you name it, right? So, and they always, companies always want to make a change, but it always seems like the IT department is like, I'm drowning, that type of thing. Yeah. And so what I really wanted to kind of drive into here, because a lot of people, it's like, how do you make this transition in the ever-changing digital transformation, if you will, and how do you minimize and do this right and minimize the risk that actually, how do you navigate through it?
You really kind of touched on it. Like, it's a rising tide, and as a result of that, the IT departments are often drowning. Right? There's just more of everything. There's more people, there's more devices, there's more complexity. Things are in the cloud, things are on-prem, there's IoT devices, there's your desktop, your laptop, your phone, and just more and more of everything. And like you said, the IT teams are often drowning. They're just kind of caught by the tsunami of activity, the tsunami of demand that's coming from the business. And it's a real challenge. And really what businesses are kind of straddling is they've got hey, we've been running a business, we've been doing things this way for a long time. And now we've got this massive desire and appetite to kind of embrace all of this new stuff. We want to deploy best of breed. We want to give everyone and our staff and our people and our customers new stuff and new experiences and new capabilities. And everyone wants to flip a switch and have that kind of instant gratification. And that's really where IT kind of sits at that intersection, right? You've got all this legacy stuff and you're trying to change the wheels on the bus while you're driving 100 miles an hour. And as a result of that, IT just as kind of the kind of sitting at that crossroads is struggling, and that's where we're coming to the table as a capability and a tooling and a platform to really help those teams really bridge the gap, give the business what they want, manage the infrastructure in such a way that it's secure, and you're doing that with discipline and rigor so that you're not essentially exposing yourself to kind of pitfalls and challenges along the way.
So how in your company does your solution actually help regarding this? And I never do this. I never ask that particular question of a person because I don't want this to be a promotional, right? But what you do with your company is such a critical component of reducing turnover within companies as well. Because, when we burn out these IT people, they leave.
Yep.
So how do you do it?
It's an interesting post-COVID's, phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, right? The great resignation, right? People are spent. They're at capacity. There's just, again, this tsunami of demand, and there's just tremendous appetite for new stuff. And the existing teams are really, finite. They've only got so much capacity. They've only got so much that they can do. Right. And really, the tools that they've had to be able to kind of consume these changes haven't really evolved in the last 10, 20 years. And so the demand just keeps piling on. And as a result of that, people are fatigued, they're overburdened, and they just can't manage the requests. And so what we've been able to do is really kind of enable and give those people the control and the capacity that they need to do what's expected, right? Again, the business wants to deploy new stuff. Everyone's working from home, right? So that's completely changed how we work and how we function, how we sell, how we engage with our customers and our staff. And that means the IT teams need to sit at making that a reality kind of overnight. And without the tools and the resources to make that happen, they've really been hamstrung. And so again, that's why we're kind of the enabler for those teams to be able to do what's asked, and to give them that capacity and to give them that relief that they need to manage this ever-growing complex scenario that's just, again, kind of layering on with more and more demand. And so it has a lot to do with retention. It has a lot to do with giving people the resources that they need to do their function. So you hit something that's obviously near and dear to my heart, selling. A lot of times companies, people within companies, they look at IT and they go, they're just IT. You know what I mean? Like they just, right. They make our stuff work, right? But I've explained to many businesses over the year, and I don't want to sound like, but I literally have worked with almost thousands of businesses, right? That IT is as important as any other functional department within a company or division within a company. And it directly affects the sales department. So I'm looking for some backup here, because I've had some people say, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. I'm like, look, if IT can't deliver, your salespeople can't communicate. So if you found that IT is underappreciated by most departments or divisions as well, including the sales division, number one. Yeah. Historically, IT was kind of considered, we have these things and we're going to throw it over the wall and someone's going to get it done. And largely, it was kind of downstream operational stuff. But what's happening is like every decision a business make has an IT component and an IT ramification or something that we've got to weigh in on. And without bringing them to have a seat at the table, decisions are made kind of in a vacuum, and you really don't understand what the left hand and the right hand is doing. So for instance, we have a couple of clients that are in the midst of these massive transformations, and the business wants to be able to do all these great things, and they set goals and targets for revenue and goals for expansion and so forth. And there is an absence of kind of perspective and involvement from the practical, like, this is where we are. And there are steps and things that you've got to do to kind of reach there. And it's not just a flip of the switch. There's process, there's things that you got to do without breaking or disrupting the business. And so IT is certainly kind of elevating its role in the conversation, and they are a strategic partner in the discussion. And the resources that you can bring to bear or not directly impact everyone in the org, sales for sure, but kind of universally. If you don't have the tools, you don't have the resources, you don't have the collaboration, everything is so dynamic and agile that you need to have that seat at the table. Otherwise, you're definitely going to miss opportunities. You're definitely not going to have the best of breed solutions. You're certainly not going to be competitive in this market and in this landscape. So it's certainly been an evolution in my career and my trajectory, watching IT really kind of elevate from, more operational, more kind of order takers of what's being kind of directed, versus now, hey, if you want to do these things, you have to be forward thinking and really strategic in what you're doing, as opposed to just kind of reactionary and somewhat just, shooting from the hip.
We're speaking with Mr. Paul Deur from ReadyWorks, and Paul is the founder of the company, correct?
One of the co-founders, yes, sir.
Co-founders, excuse me, one of the co-founders. I want to step back for one moment, because IT can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So I want to kind of get your definition of what is IT, so people get that kind of perspective of what we're talking about.
Sure. So from our perspective, we think of IT as kind of the infrastructure and the plumbing that allows a company to operate. And universally, whatever your vertical, whether you're in financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, so on and so forth, everyone is essentially coming to IT to consume some services in the form of applications, in the form of some device, and you try to run what you do on a day-to-day basis with IT as kind of the enabler or the backbone by which you do that. And again, when we think about transformation and what companies are trying to do, again, go back to COVID and everyone working remotely, right? 2 years ago, everyone was in an office, plugged into a network and plugged into an infrastructure that allowed people to do things. And then overnight, everyone was distributed. Everyone was off-prem and doing or looking to do the same level of activities, the same level of services, and give customers their same level of experience without having to be there. That was a massive transformation that kind of was just brought on by the necessity of what COVID kind of presented. But it's that intersection again of how a company operates. What are the plumbing? What is the plumbing that allows people to have these applications, to have these services, to have this technology at their fingertips, to be able to do what they do. So when we think about, kind of our role as ReadyWorks, we try to sit there as an enabler to those IT teams to be able to give their customers, to give their businesses the things that they're asking for and the things that they need to be best in class and most competitive within their market. And again, that journey is not very simple. The bigger the organization, the more complex it is. That's very, very difficult. And you think about an organization that's 100 years old, that's been running claims or processes or been running medical services or practices this way for the last 20, 30 years. And now overnight, you're looking to transform how they operate, how they function, how they bill, how they sell, how they engage. Like it's very, very transformative in kind of the customer experience and how they operate internally.
Makes a lot of sense. And the thing is, like you gave a great example, right? I mean, overnight, boom, the whole landscape changed. Yep. And it's changed not only for operations and human resources and those departments, but it's actually changed for sales too. Because since people have now gone off-prem, if you will, off-premise, and they're working from home, they're this and that, one of the number one things that people say to me is, how do you get to these people any longer? Like, I used to be able to go to an office and sort of try to present myself, or, I call into a central PBX, a phone system, and I'd get the gatekeeper. Well, guess what? The gatekeeper doesn't always answer the phone anymore. Like, I mean, if we look at any company that's sort of doing virtual, or been virtual, even JetBlue, if you call into JetBlue, I mean, you might hear a barking dog or a baby in the background.
Yeah, that's the new norm
of the person now helping you with the reservation. So sales in itself has changed overnight. And do you think this is ever going to I mean, people talk, well, we're going to go back, right? We're going back to the office or whatever. But do you ever think the actual digital side, not yet the marketing, I would like to get into that in a moment, but just the actual digital side of running a business, do you think that's ever going to go back to what it was, or is it now has changed and that's the way it's going to be?
Oh no, we've opened up Pandora's box, and this is the new normal. And it'll the pendulum will swing to a certain extent, but this is now part of the ecosystem and part of the experience. And like you said, specifically from a sales perspective, how you engage with someone, how you try to get on their radar, how you try to get their attention is fundamentally changed.
Yeah.
You mentioned, hey, years ago, you would be able to set up a time, you'd meet with your client, you'd be on site, you'd have this casual conversation, you'd have this ability to kind of understand who they are, what their needs are, and build a rapport and do those things that naturally come with the sales motions. And now it's segmented to a 45-minute Zoom call that's very, very structured. You can't really see who's on the other side sometimes. You can't really read the presentation or how people are responding to your experience. And then the follow-up and the engagement thereafter, which is so naturally, kind of human, has been kind of moved into this digital realm of very, very curt and transactional experiences, which are very challenging. So you got to get creative around the tools that you're using, the follow-ups that you deploy, the resources that you share, the collateral that's available to you, the ways in which the customer now wants to engage with us has completely transitioned, right? Mm-hmm. Most folks don't want to have sales be the first experience that they encounter. They want to do their own due diligence. They want to read and explore and have an experience digitally, either through a trial version or a download, or look at your reviews in some other kind of social validation, like a G2 or a Yelp or something in that regard. They want to do their homework about you before they ever really engage with you. And that's transforming this whole sales experience. It's notably different from where it was just a couple of years ago.
So let's say we're, a manufacturer's rep organization. You and I, we start a business, and I go to you and I go, Paul, what do I do? What would I do? What would be the first thing that I do? I want to set up my IT appropriately. What would be is there like a logical sequence of steps, or am I I'm asking because I don't know, right? So I'm a company listening to this conversation. I'm going, oh my gosh, I can tell you from the sales perspective, people doing these type of things that we're doing right now over a digital medium, they have zero redundancy built into their network, zero. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you guys are doing digital presentations all day long. What happens if your bandwidth goes down? Mm-hmm. Comcast promises a 99.7% of whatever the number is, right? Right. I'm like, okay, let's go even further. Somebody down the street knocks the pole out that's holding onto your cable. No matter what Comcast, Xfinity says to you, they can't control that. They take out that, the transformer blows up, burns all the wiring, whatever it might be. So if I was going to start this plan of IT, and I'm like, I'm an established company or, whatever, what should I be thinking about first, second, third, fourth in that capacity?
Sure. So what applies to sales from an IT perspective, I think applies universally to any organization, which is, you got to have a solid foundation. You got to have flexibility. You got to have the scalability. So that way, when things happen and disruption comes, you've just got options. Right? There is no silver bullet. There is no panacea of the perfect scenario. What you're really trying to figure out is what works for you, what works for kind of the 99% of the time, and then have options in the event that something changes. You think about even today in the current landscape of the supply chain, right? You can't get stuff. You can't get equipment. You can't get resources. So what do you do? And those are things that you'll never have, full control over, regardless of how well you plan. But there's fundamental kind of best practices that really, again, address the basic needs and then give you options. Obviously leaning into the cloud and managing that resiliency from the cloud is largely the posture that every organization is adopting, either kind of small, mid-market and into the large enterprise. And trying to take what you do and make it as cloud friendly as possible is really just kind of best practices. Because again, that gives you the most flexibility in a number of ways, and in terms of redundancy you just described, or even in the context of accessibility, right? With labor shortages and the great resignation and resources being distributed everywhere, cloud really gives you many benefits that kind of mitigate some of those concerns. And again, that's why many of our enterprise clients are really trying to take much of their on-prem legacy infrastructure and they're trying to migrate and move to the cloud so that they can realize the promise and the benefit of what that's supposed to give them. That's flexibility, scalability, and some of those redundancies. And then outside of that, it's just best practices and running a good business, right? Making sure that you have redundancy both in people and processes, and you have good tooling. With the way that cloud offerings have expanded and so forth, there's fantastic tools that allow you to do what you need to do as best in breed, right? Like there's specific solutions that have HR functions, that have sales functions, that have finance functions, and so forth. And you can stitch together an ecosystem of stuff that really gives you the best things that are in the market, as opposed to you building those things in-house and homegrown and trying to kind of brute force your path forward, right? So it's like learn the lessons from the collective, millions of people that are doing these things on a day-to-day basis, and that's what they do really well, and bring those as advantages to what you do in your specific operation. So I would say those are kind of the fundamentals.
I appreciate that, because to me, redundancy is it's not even a question, especially if you're selling today. A couple little quick stories. Like, I had a team that was working for me and they all signed off they would have a redundant circuit in their home, right? Because they were doing for a client, they were doing particular presentations and they were closing for them, and the commissions weren't bad, right? So long story short, one of the guys told me, guy from Florida, I got it. All of a sudden I get a text message off his phone. I have no service. So I call him and I'm like, what's up? He's like, my service went down. I'm like, you got a presentation in 15 minutes. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, tether to your phone. He's like, I don't have that type of phone. I'm like, what, where's your backup circuit? He goes, I don't have one. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, here I am running the whole division in the department. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I do this. I get on there. I sell. The commission out of that sale was $15,000 paid to me, which would have been paid to him, right? So he loses $15,000 because he couldn't put in, at that point in his house, a $35 backup DSL circuit, right? So because
you only need to learn that lesson once, you'll never do it again, right?
Well, you would think, Paul, right? A month later, he still doesn't have the redundancy built back into his organization. So I fired him. I'm like, that's it. I'm thinking, you're not going to leave the client hanging. If you can't put a $400 cost into your location, I mean, you're making 200 grand a year, right? That type of thing. So that's on a small level. Then I had a client that did a larger client that also they brought people in and they had a large facility. So they would put like a theater type thing and they had like 400 people at this live event. Their data went down. For whatever reason.
Yeah, things happen. And as much as we've grown to kind of expect things to be redundant and resilient and kind of always on at our fingertips, right? Like that's kind of how we've been nurtured as a just kind of today's functioning. Like things happen, things go down. There's a storm, there's a hurricane, there's a whatever, and it's always kind of downstream. We'll worry about that when it comes up, but once it happens, you realize that the impacts are real. And in the same breath, that's why moving off of these legacy type of platforms and moving things to the cloud and having those that redundancy and that resiliency is so important, right? If you think about a large enterprise, a Fortune 100, 200 organization, like there is zero margin for that hiccup. You can't afford to run your business with that. We'll see what happens. Like that's just not an option. And then you have regulation, whether you're on, a bank or you're a hospital, and you have certain controls that you need to apply to your information, to your critical services. that is no longer, again, an option. It's mission critical. And with sales, we have maybe a little more latitude, but it certainly is still the same set of requirements. And if you're expecting to bring those offerings to your customers and you're looking to present and sell to them, they're going to expect the same of you. So it's, you don't want to be the cobbler's kids with no shoes, right? You've got to kind of raise the bar and demonstrate, you drink your own champagne. This is what you're about, and we're bringing to you, customer, confidence and best in breed, and we're demonstrating for you a path forward, and that's what we're here to sell, whatever it is. And if you can't demonstrate that and represent that yourselves, how is a customer supposed to have that confidence in you in terms of your core offering?
Yeah, it translates down to all facets of IT, because I mean, let's just take security, for example, right? You mentioned banks or a hospital, right? Let's say banks, as they do, they have salespeople. They're out selling people to buy loans, buy this, buy that. But what happens if it goes public that your sales team was discovered, had pornography all over their particular, I don't know, laptop, let's say, or tablet, right? And that gets out publicly. What's going to happen to the reputation of the business?
Sure.
Right? I mean,
those things are not, they're not an option. You just can't afford to have that kind of be on your watch. People will get fired as a result of that. The collateral damage that comes as a result of that are just not an option. And that's why you have those controls, and that's why you have those reviews and those audits and those things to kind of maintain that level of discipline. And when you think about, again, these big enterprises going through change, that's what they're going through constantly. They're constantly going through, there's an evolution from every vendor, from every manufacturer, from every piece of software or infrastructure. Everyone's upgrading their stuff at a regular cadence. So you need to be able to consume that, and you need to be able to adopt that in a healthy posture, right? Like if all these releases and all these updates are available, but you are now 10 revisions behind, you're no better than if you were using some old stuff. and
exactly.
and it's really like, oh yeah, they're here, but we never opened up, and explored what those patches were, what those updates were. And you've got to do that as kind of like a wellness program with your own health, right? If you're eating, fast food every day and wondering why you never get on the treadmill and you're a bunch of pounds overweight, like it's not an option. it's the same thing with your infrastructure, with your IT. There's health, there's maintenance, there's cadence of things that need to be done, and it's just becoming more and more complicated. It's becoming more and more technically involved, and you've got to adopt a posture that allows you to do that, again, both for your sales organization and the rest of the org. And that's really our new normal. That's our kind of modern landscape.
Yeah, I agree. The old statement, what do you mean, doctor, I gained 42 pounds? I never did, I was here a year ago. What are you talking about? Right. So we're speaking with Mr. Paul Deur from a company called ReadyWorks. Check them out. Paul, how do people get a hold of you if they want to, or you or the company? And we'll put all this in the show notes for everybody on the listener side.
Sure. The name of the organization is ReadyWorks, and the URL is readyworks.com, and all the appropriate socials are about the same handle. We're anywhere you would probably look for us or Google us. That's you could easy to find us.
It's super easy. By the way, you type in ReadyWorks in Google and bam, you come up front page. So it's super easy. Paul, I always like to ask this question at the end for two reasons. One, I love talking about content and core of the business with people, and so people can learn. IT is not maybe anymore. It's as critical as any division or department in a company. And two, I like to hold this to the end because it makes people listen to the end, because they always know this conversation is coming. So a lot of people who listen, they're looking to sell to CEOs, they're looking to sell to the founders, co-founders of companies, things of that nature. But quite frankly, they're not really sure, even though they've probably been told 30 times on this podcast alone, this is how you do it. But I still get messages today, and I'm not shaming anybody. I'm just saying, hey, look, sometimes we got to hear things more than one time from different people to really get the message. So if people want to get to somebody at your level within your type of industry or your type of company, how should they look at trying to build a relationship or get in the door, if you will, with a person who's in your type of position?
It's with the advent of today's kind of modern ecosystem, right? The amount of information and the amount of intel that you can garner about a company, a prospect, an organization is really pretty significant.
Right.
And everyone is just completely overwhelmed with sensory overload, too much, and it's really hard to kind of break through some of that noise. That being said, really targeted messaging that really speaks to and understands someone's pain and the things that they need that are top of mind, that are mission critical to them, will always have a way to kind of resonate and percolate. Despite how many podcasts that are out there, why do people still come to yours? Because there's an authentic voice. There's something that's real, that's tangible, that will speak to people that are looking for this type of content. And sales motions are really no different. If you're looking to speak with people that have these challenges and these needs and these areas of interest, speaking to them directly and understanding their pain and really offering value and benefit, it's just kind of the basic one-on-one stuff, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of investment of time and resources to be able to kind of uncover that. If you're trying to just blanket and buckshot out to everyone with massive messaging and mass campaigns, that's going to have a very, very limited hit rate, as all of the data and the statistics will show you over time. It's 0.11%, if that, right? But if you are thoughtful, if you are intelligent about the outreach and the message and the communication and the value prop, and it's authentic, I feel that always has a way to resonate and bubble up to the top.
Well said, sir. It's communicate in a meaningful and relevant manner to the person, and presenting value that means something to the receiver, not just to the seller.
Yeah.
And it was well said. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Paul, I really appreciate you being here, sharing your expertise, pouring your heart out into this thing, because I know that's the type of guy you are. I'd love to have you back on another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Is there anything that you were hoping about? I hope Doug asked this question or anything like that, or did I do like a pretty stand-up job on this?
No, Doug, always a pleasure chatting with you. And I love the free flow and discussion. It goes a number of different ways. I think we covered a bit. My hope is that what we've shared today means something to folks, and hopefully folks find value in it, and happy to contribute and share wherever I can.
Thank you, Paul. And folks, those of you who are listening, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to get an IT consideration plan, something. You have your company, reach out to ReadyWorks. It's very easy to find. READY works, WORKS, and talk to Paul, talk to his staff, and they'll help you along the way. So Paul, thanks again for being here, sir.
My pleasure, Doug. Real pleasure.
Well, many of you may not have thought at the beginning of this podcast, like, well, is IT really, that important? But now you probably realize, my gosh, it's inevitable, and you must keep it running the way it's supposed to run. And maybe you didn't know before, your IT department was overstressed, overrun, overreached. And, here's the thing, if you lose great quality people in IT, it's not just that you lost another person. It takes time to train people and get them into the environment and understand how your IT is supposed to run. And the reality is IT supports every department, every division within your company. And IT people generally have felt in the past like, they're really not that valued, and who wants to feel that way, right? So the reality is, if you're selling, be nice to your IT people, because they're the ones that keep you running. They're the ones that keep your data up. They're the ones who keep your data running. They're the ones who create or help create your reports many times. They're the ones who can help you with mobility. They're the ones who can help you be far more productive. And so your IT department is extremely important in your life. And I highly recommend you check out his company. Super nice guy. I've had numerous conversations with him. Very smart, understands not only IT, but how to run companies and how to build sales teams and those type of things as well. So if you have a topic of interest that you want us to cover, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Send the information, say, hey, I'm looking for a topic on this. We will find experts. We have access to a lot of experts, and these people are real, right? Not only real people, but they're real business owners who have all this experience, who will willing to share it with you. So don't be shy, reach out, let us know. Some of you have already done that. I really appreciate that. Those of you who love this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the higher the rankings would be for this podcast and the more favorable, beneficial terms that we can get for negotiation on the podcast and the more content we can bring to you. If you have friends, please introduce them if you think this will be helpful to them. And of course, if you want to build your business, grow your revenues, you want to hire, manage, retain, and utilize high performers and sales, those A sales players, elite performers, we can help you there, as well as get yourself or your team into the top 1% of your sales globally. Just reach out to me at Doug@CEOSalesStrategies.com, or if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, as some of you do, it's Doug Brown 123, or if you want to call us directly, 603-595-0303. Until next time, go out, sell things, sell them profitably, sell a lot of them, make someone happy, help their world. Until next time, this is Doug with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit CEOSalesStrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.